All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to chat with you all. Today's episode is going to be about my first year as a parent of two and kind of reflecting on the process. And let's just dive in. We were going to actually do an interview today, but plans changed and I decided let's do a solo. And I'm actually excited for that because I think it's going to work well because there's stuff to talk about. So before I dive into reflecting on like the first year of being a parent of two, which is so insane to say because I honestly cannot comprehend how I gave birth a year ago or the fact that I have two children, I want to do like a deep dive into the journal because I am so wildly obsessed with this product and so proud and so excited for it to be in all of your hands. So if you are watching on YouTube, which I know I like link it out on my Instagram, but I don't even know if I've ever said it on here. You can watch these episodes on YouTube. I don't know how much of, well, I know that our listenership is not a huge YouTube community, but if you want to like observe the walkthrough of this journal, it'll be on YouTube. Okay. So, the Quiet Your Mind and Busy Your Hands journal and adult coloring affirmation book is finally here. This has been such a labor of love. I was approached by North and Third, the publishing company, who I'm so honored to work with. Like, I want to say over the summer, because I remember getting the email, like, crouched down on my laptop on the ground while I was trying to get our baby to sleep. And I was in my parents', like, the nursery, my parents' beach house. And I was so excited by the idea because this is something that I truly have wanted to do for the past 3 years. Ever since I had our first, I have deeply relied on practices for my mental health. And anytime I mention that I journal or mention that I color or anything like that, I'm honestly always getting messages. And I don't say this in an annoying way. Like, I swear, people are messaging me being like, what journal do you use? How do you journal? Do you use a gratitude journal? Do you use the 5 minute journal? Do you do prompts or do you just do blank pages? And historically, I've always just blank page dumped onto a page. Like, all of my thoughts are just flowing out of me. But I understand that that is like very stressful for many people. So I always had this idea like I would love to create a journal of sorts. I've also always wanted to create a physical product. That has been a goal of mine and on my vision board for many of years, but I wanted it to feel very, very right. I didn't want it to be something that I wasn't extremely passionate about and something that I was like really proud of. So the journal aspect is something I always wanted to do. And then the adult coloring affirmation came to fruition when we were brainstorming this journal because for me, it's all about how am I prioritizing my mental health and filling my cup. And I started to think about the things that I do to best support my mental health. And three of the biggest things are journaling, affirmations, and doing things that busy my hands. And that was adult coloring for a bit. Then I kind of went off of that and I started cross stitching it a lot, which we'll get into because it does tie into part of this book and the like real thought process we really dove into while creating this book. And the overarching goal for all of these things is to quiet my mind and busy my hands. Because as someone, especially with ADHD, but anxiety, who's constantly just like going between 10,000 things at once, I find that if my hands are busy, I'm able to actually concentrate at the task at hand. And when I'm able to concentrate, my brain is quiet. So the adult coloring, we decided to merge with the affirmations in the hopes that while you are coloring these images, the affirmations are like seeping into your brain. I then took this idea to the publishing company with my managers. They loved it and we decided to get working on it and we crammed. When I say crammed, like we crammed because we really didn't decide to officially do this until I think it was like August and we needed it in the publisher's hands final product like final pages by what month are we in? October. I think it was like mid-September in order to get it the product for me to review and then the order placed and then eventually shipped and then in your hands in time for the holiday season because that was very important to me. I think this is such an incredible option for a holiday present. And I also think that the holidays bring up a lot of angst and emotion and just anxiety for people. And I wanted to provide them with an outlet to work through those feelings. So, really, this book was created out of modalities that have helped me tremendously that I want to offer to all of you. Um, Now, we worked with an incredible artist, Hannah Sheridan. She actually created like our original merch drop designs, and I'm so happy to be like to have worked with her again on this. The book has a little intro of like who I am, why I created this, and then how to use this journal. It's really your own canvas and you can decide how to use it best. For me, I prefer to journal in the morning and I color at night. That's just what works for me. It doesn't have to be the process that you use. It's really up to you. The journal pages, I will show an example to the YouTube viewers. The journal pages have very small, like one line prompts. So, an example is like, I'm inspired by, or another one is, I'm energized by. And you will actually notice a little tidbit. It starts with, I'm grateful for, and I'm excited for. And those are two things that Joe and I say to each other at night, like what we're grateful for and what we're excited about. The prompts are there to gently guide you, but you can completely ignore them. So you have the front of a journal page and then the back of a journal page to write as you please. I know that some people are like very intimidated by a blank page, so that's why the prompt is there. Then the coloring affirmations. These are a bunch of affirmations that I say to myself time and time again. And truly, like positive affirmations have shifted my mindset. I started them when I was what year was that? Like 2015. So how long ago was that? 9 years ago. When I was in my mid-20s and I was really struggling with my body image and anxiety and like bouts of depression, and it shifted everything for me. Truly changed the way that I thought, the way that I talked to myself, the way that I talk to others, and I believe that there's so much power in affirmations. So I put together a list of my top ones, whether it's like, I am worthy, I am beautiful, food should be fun, I am capable of amazing things. Um, I, let me see other ones. And then there are also sayings that I say a lot, like comparison is the thief of joy, fill your cup, I am enough just as I am, manifesting my dreams. We then sat down, Hannah and I, and we took all of my affirmations and we started to think about, like, okay, what imagery comes to mind when you think of these things? Or what are fun things that would be easy to color in? So we created images for each affirmation. Like this is the example for YouTube of manifesting my dreams. Obviously, it's a bunch of mushrooms because duh. But we really wanted it to be these simple images that you could color in one sitting. I really dislike when I do adult coloring feeling so overwhelmed by the page because it's like so many different small figures and lines and circles and it just feels so daunting that I will start and then I feel like I'm not getting anywhere and so then I just kind of give up. This was really meant to be like you sit down, you can finish them all. And trust me, I'm doing them all. Like this is the unbothered one with butterflies. I love it so much. So they are simple for a reason. It's not supposed to feel overwhelming. I love starting and completing a task in one sitting. The way that the cross stitching played into this is that when I was cross stitching a lot, I was getting so many messages of like, what do you do with these when you're done? And I had honestly never thought about that because I just enjoyed the act of cross stitching. But then I started to realize, like, oh, maybe I should be doing something with this, or I'm putting in all this work. Like, do I want to use it in some way? So I started framing them. I made one for my son that's like to infinity and beyond, and I framed it and put it in his room. I started making ones of affirmations and making them into coasters for my office. So we purposely made each image a 5 by 7 image. And then around it, there's a little border of dotted lines with like the scissor emoji to remind you that you can cut out the image. There's nothing on the back. So don't worry, you're not like going to cut out a journal page and you can frame it. So, specifically, a 5 by 7 frame will fit these images. You can put them anywhere in your house. You can give them to a friend. I just loved that, like, ability to then use it in another way and repurpose it. Plus, it's always helpful to see affirmations. I used to have sticky notes all over my mirror of like, I am amazing, I am worthy, all of these things that I wanted just to flood my brain and ingrain into my subconscious. So that was the purpose of that. The last thing that was, like, so particular about building this book is I hate when I'm journaling or coloring and the bind of the book does not allow me to, like, fully open the book to lay flat. You know how when you're reading a book, there's, like, the inner bind that's, like, still kinda curved on the pages? And if you're coloring, you can't get in that section, and even if you're writing, you can't get in that section. So it's a spiral bound, and I mean, it changes the game for me. When I'm journaling, I can like again, this is so hard to explain with my words. On YouTube, I'm explaining it very well with my imagery. But you can completely like turn the cover to the back. So it's just one sided for you to color or to journal. It's a hard cover. Honestly, I love it so much. It's like I've never been more proud of something mine. Well, that's not true, my children. But like this is something I'm really fucking proud of when it comes to work. And I truly think that so many people will enjoy this and that it'll help so many. So the Quiet Your Mind and Busy Your Hands Journal and Adult Coloring Affirmation book is now available. You can head to my site, CameronOakesRogers.com/quiet-your-mind, or you can click the link in the show notes. And they will be arriving, I'm going to say early December. There's a chance late November, but early December to be safe. And I just can't fucking wait for you all to have it in your hands. So, today's episode, I want to dive into reflecting on 1 year with two children. By the time this episode airs, my son, my baby, will officially be one. And I'm recording this 3 days before his birthday. And I'm honestly just like so completely baffled by the fact that it has been a year. I cannot comprehend it, and I really don't think I've come to terms with it because this month especially has been absolutely bananas. Like, I don't know what is happening in October that is just trying to literally, like, pile every single possible thing into 1 month, but between work and then personal stuff and just our schedules have been mayhem, so I don't think I have fully, like, sat and resonated and acknowledged that he's turning one. I also don't necessarily feel big emotions around birthdays like a lot of people do. I love birthdays, don't get me wrong, but I've never personally like cried over getting older or felt like they were these huge milestones for my kids that like sadden me. I really think of them as ways to celebrate and they're such gifts and I just want them to be fun. I remember doing an episode when my first son turned one about like letting go or fighting against the manic mom mold, and I'll link it in the show notes, but I just remember so much high stress around my household when it came to hosting events and parties, and I think there's so much pressure put on us in today's day and age of social media, especially around kids' birthday parties. Like, some of these kids' birthdays I see on social media are nicer than, weddings. Like, we've lost the plot, in my opinion. If it's something you really enjoy doing, that's so great. I do feel like a lot of it is for the image of social media, but that's my own personal feelings. That to me is like not of interest. I don't want to be throwing these extravagant parties. That very much overwhelms me, and that's not fun. I wouldn't be able to show up and have fun with my child, and that's what I think they deserve. So we are keeping it casual, friends, pizza, salads, goldfish and pretzels and some drinks, and we're gonna, like, set up our bouncy house in the backyard that we bought for our son's 3rd birthday that he probably is gonna think this is his birthday party. There's, I'm sure, gonna be confusion around that, but the bouncy house has been truly one of the best investments because whenever we have friends over and it's nice out, we just blow that thing up and they have so much fun. But I did sit down and jot out some points that I just wanna touch on to reflect on this past year. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind, like the overarching theme, and what I catch myself saying all the time is that it's beautiful chaos. It's so incredible. And I just feel so blessed to have two healthy, wonderful children and for them to have each other. And it's my favorite thing, but it's also insanely fucking chaotic. Like, chaotic in ways I couldn't have imagined. And I think that is also the fact that they are two wildly different children, which I will get into, but it's just utter chaos. And from the beginning, I'll start like in the very beginning. I do remember in the hospital feeling this kind of like confusion that I don't know if I fully reckoned of like this just felt so different than the first time. Yes, the novelty was not there the entire pregnancy and delivery, and I think that that's just the fact that you've done it before. I do think that there was a small sense of that in the fact that we didn't find out the sex of the baby before I gave birth, so that was very fun for us, but I kind of remember being in the hospital with him and feeling this like confusing emotion of this is so incredible to meet this new human, but I also really miss our toddler and I miss being home with him. And then I felt guilty for missing him when I was with our new baby. And that kind of was the theme for the beginning of parenting too for me. It was this constant push and pull of wanting to be in two places at once and not physically being able to, and then feeling guilty for those feelings. And there were moments of me, I mean, hysterically sobbing on the couch in the beginning, being like, not what have I done, but how am I ever going to do this? Because I just remember trying to breastfeed our baby. And at the beginning, we were breastfeed, or I was breastfeeding. So it was very much like I had to be the one to feed him. And our feeding journey was a bit of a shit show. He was constantly uncomfortable, so it was never like an easy, enjoyable feed for either of us. And my toddler in the other room just yelling like, "Come play with me. Come do this with me. Mommy, come in the basement. I want to show you something." And I just remember sobbing, and other nights of me breastfeeding him to sleep in his nursery and like on the rocking chair, and hearing my husband with our toddler across the hall in their room like having so much fun and doing all of the things that I also enjoy doing around bedtime, and feeling this sense of I'm missing out, and then feeling badly that I felt that way because I was with our other child. It just felt very polarizing, and I constantly felt like in the beginning especially, I was only with one. I was never with both and comfortable. I was with one, and when I was with one, I was missing the other. And then I felt badly for missing the other because I was with one. And I also think that with 2, I felt incredibly touched out in ways I could have never, ever, ever imagined, because there was constantly someone on me and at times 2 people on me, and that feeling in tangent with the feeling of never really being alone. I think with 1, it was really easy for Joe and I to tag team in the sense of like, "Oh, yeah, go do whatever you wanna do, like, I'll be with him for however much time," and it was easy to kind of have those moments to yourself, even if it's just like, go shower and go just relax for a bit. Now that's possible again because we've both gotten better at being with both alone, but in the beginning, it felt so daunting and overwhelming that it was hard to be alone with them, and so the other one never really got alone time as a parent. Um, I think that also, like, there was no real postpartum, period. There was mental and physical postpartum, but there was no, like, what we know of as quote unquote maternity leave postpartum, because you have to keep up with your other child. And I remember being at the Halloween day parade at my son's school. So I gave birth, yeah, that was under 2 weeks postpartum. And I was like, I'm not gonna miss that. I'm not gonna miss his first Halloween parade at school or trick or treating. Like, it was our first neighborhood Halloween, and having a 2-week-old strapped to my chest and just like taking a step back, being like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I remember just doing things that were so out of the realm of possibilities my first go around, but so expected the second go around because you have another child to keep up with. And I imagine every time you have a kid after the first, it just continues to get harder and harder and harder because your other kids don't slow down. And that's just the reality. What I envisioned happening was not exactly what happened in the sense of their relationship. I was always hoping that, like, our first would really love him and take to him and be so excited and obsessed and, everything you hear about. Obviously, I was scared and afraid that it would go the opposite and he would hate him and hit him and be angry. Our first just, like, fell right in the middle ground where he just straight up did not acknowledge our baby. Like, it was as if he didn't exist. Every once in a blue moon, he would say hi to him, and we would, like, quickly get a picture if he would let us, but honestly, there was, like, just no acknowledgement, which I guess wasn't the worst thing, but it wasn't, like, the best thing. It was very just, like, middle of the ground, and I just kept hoping, like, maybe this will improve, and it since has, which has been so much fun for us. Um, and then I also think that they were just 2 very different experiences in the beginning. Like, these babies could not be more different. Our first never spit up. He spit up once his entire life. He slept like an angel. He was just so calm from the second he entered this world. I remember him just always sleeping on me, just so still. He was just like he could do like I would lay on a couch with him and watch movies and he would just lay on me and cuddle. Our second is the most determined human I have ever witnessed in my life and never stops moving. He is never not moving. And he is so determined, he will get to whatever he wants to get to and he will not give up. It is incredible to observe and also very tiring. But he also didn't really sleep. He had a ton of reflex. Like it was just from the get go, they were so different. And that was very eye opening for Joe and I to observe because it's this whole conversation of nature versus nurture. And this was so clearly nature that there was nothing we did to create these differences. It was just there from the moment they entered the world, like truly from the moment they came into this world. With that, they were different experiences. Things that were a lot easier with our first were a lot harder with our second. Things that were harder for me with our first when it came to my mental health were a lot easier with my second. And I think that was such a gift because I think the combo of having a more difficult postpartum experience with our child and a difficult mental health postpartum experience combined would have been very, very difficult to get through. So I feel very blessed for that. Once we hit that, like, 7 to 9-month mark, I did feel a huge shift for the positive. I think this is such a turning point for me and many women, but I'll speak for myself in terms of postpartum. I remember this exact window of time with our first and feeling like, "Okay, I can find myself again. Oh, I can start to have a little bit more freedom. I'm re-entering," or I had re-entered, but maybe I was feeling more of, like, stable footing when it came to work. Your baby, he had just started sleeping around 5, 6 months, like, so much opened up. Also, it was at that moment, I mean, a little earlier, but really around that time where, like, you could comfortably do things with both of them alone. So, it wasn't this constant need of both of us to be on 24/7, like, we could give each other breaks between Joe and I, and the other person would have both of them, and it was fine. It wasn't like this complete shit show. Obviously, sometimes it was, but for the general consensus, it was okay. I also think that, like, our toddler started finally acknowledging our baby, which was so fun because, again, it is that thing that, like, you dream of witnessing. Our baby has been obsessed with our toddler since the moment he could, like, see. He just tracks him all day long. His head is just constantly following our toddler. No matter what our toddler is doing, our baby is watching, and he is trying to be wherever our toddler is. He just wants to be next to him at all freaking times. And once our toddler started acknowledging him, it was like this glimmer of the future of siblings and potential, like, best friends and brothers who hopefully, like, love doing things together. I think for me and for Joe, that was so important because it was something we envisioned for so long as people who are so close with their siblings. Um, I think now at 1 year, I've hit the, like, true look, I don't mean that this is for every child, whether it's my friends' babies or both of my babies. I'm not a newborn person. Sure, is like a newborn cuddle and like the scent of a newborn incredible? Yes. But like the actual parenting of a newborn isn't really for me. Quite honestly, I find it a little boring. And I just want like that interaction. I'm like, okay, I wish you were like able to do things. And I know some people love the newborn phase, and then I think some people feel like me, it's just not, I don't know, it doesn't it's not my favorite phase whatsoever. I love the phase we are in right now, and I know it only gets better and more challenging from here, but like him being able to move around, to smile, to start to say words, to do things, like, it's just he has popped, as my cousins and I say, like, he's coming into himself. He's such a person now with, like, his own personality and his looks, like, he is just so fucking delicious. I want to eat him every minute of the day. So I'm wildly obsessed with this stage. I think it's so fun to watch them observe the world right now and take things in and interact and react, and they really start to feel like humans and not these, like, potatoes that exist. I also feel like right now is so fun, again, watching the 2 of them interact and play and love each other, but I do feel Joe and I were talking about this, like, something I'm struggling with is when I reflect on this past year, specifically myself, I do feel I don't know if guilt is the right word because it's circumstances that I can't necessarily change. Sure, I could have changed some of them, but some of them are out of my control. Um, but just what different experiences the first year of their lives were, and not saying that one is necessarily better than the other. That's what my therapist and I have talked a lot about. But with that first year, we lived in New York. So we had the capability to do so much with such ease. It was just pop in the stroller, walk out, let's go. The world is our oyster. And I was working a lot less. That was just the manner of my work. My podcast wasn't what it is today. My partnerships weren't what they are today. I didn't have other avenues of my business. And I'm so incredibly happy with where my career is right now. I'm blown away and I'm so proud of myself and I'm so grateful and I welcome all this abundance. That being said, part of me feels sad that I spent so much more time with my first than I did with my second when I compare their first years of their lives because I just was working way less at that moment of time. Also, living in New York, like I could quickly pop out for something and pop right back in. Whereas now I'm commuting into the city, I'm trying to like stack everything into one day. There's just a lot more on my plate. We didn't have full time childcare with my first. So, again, one is not better than the other, but there is that, like, inner critical guilt comparing voice in my brain. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't there of, like, "Well, he saw you so much more," or "He got so much more one-on-one time with you." And, again, one is not better than the other, but that's hard to grapple with. But I think the reality, and one of the hardest things, is that I have another child. So, the first year of my toddler's life, I was just focused on him. He ran my world, and he got so much of my attention. I don't even know if that's a good thing, quite honestly. But with my second, yes, I'm taking care of him. Yes, he's running my world. Yes, I'm giving him attention. And it's split with our toddler. And that's just the card he's dealt. And I'm a second. So, like, I understand it. But that has been confusing for me mentally to like come to terms with almost of that different experience. What I always try to remind myself of is that our second also got a version of me that was so much more confident, so much happier, so much more fun, so much less anxious, so much less depressed, so much more enjoyable to be around. And like, that's the greatest gift. We see that the most important thing for a child's or baby's health is the mental health of their mother. So, like, what a gift that is for him. But it's still a little confusing for me to work through. I think the other biggest, I don't know if it's a comparison or what, but I just want to touch point on in terms of our relationship when I talk about my husband and I of having two versus one is that the first go around, the roommate phase felt so much more permanent. It felt so much more intense. It felt so much scarier. We do have an episode coming out on the roommate phase that we dive into this. But the second go around, I just felt like, okay, we're in the roommate phase a little bit, but this isn't forever. We'll get back. Like, no big deal. And I think that also goes for like all difficult parts of the first year of the second's life. And I think that goes for all difficult parts of the first year of the second's life because you have the lived experience. Yes, you have the confidence, but it's more so you have the lived experience to be like, this is not forever. And we'll get through this, like I know one day they will sleep. One day we will not be dealing with spit up everywhere. One day, you know, XYZ will no longer be something we think about. And you know that it's not forever. With the first, it feels like so freaking permanent. So that was a huge shift in mindset. But I think that with our relationship, that was very helpful in knowing that the roommate phase wasn't forever. I do think that in the beginning, the transition was harder on Joe than it was on me, and I've heard this is common with male it's common what I've heard is that the second is harder on, like, the non-birthing person because so much more is now falling on that person's plate that was kind of just taken by the birthing person the first go around, but I think now, 1 year in, looking at our relationship, like, we're in the strongest place right now that we have been in a while. Yes, there are still challenges, and navigating all of this that we have on our plates can be difficult, but it feels so strong, the underlying foundation. And I think something for us is just observing the family we're creating brings us so much joy. Like, we feel so incredibly grateful and blessed and privileged to have this opportunity and to watch the 2 of them continue to grow alongside each other and individually is the greatest gift we could have ever imagined. So, that's kind of my reflection on my first year with 2 kids. I'm sure I'll have many of more thoughts on this, but I do get a lot of questions about how it's been with the second, what the transition was like, the hardest parts, the highs, the lows. I think a lot of people are terrified and intimidated by the idea of adding a second, and it is a lot, but it's also, in my opinion, and everyone has very different experiences, but it's kind of like you're already doing all of this. You're already talking about schedules. You're already now prioritizing someone else's life above yours. You're already like in the world of kids that like that second edition, in my opinion, felt a lot easier than the initial transition from 0 to 1. Did it still kick my butt at times? Absolutely, yes, but it did not rock my world like the 0 to 1 did. So, if you're thinking about having a second, I hope you have the same incredible experience. If you have to, I hope some part of this resonated with you, and as always, thank you guys so much for listening. If you resonated with this episode, a rate, review, all of that stuff, share helps so much with the show, and I greatly appreciate it. Obviously, subscribe. We are also trying to do more content on the Conversations with Cam podcast. Obviously, everything on mine is Cameron Oaks Rogers, but the Conversations with Cam podcast Instagram is what I meant to say. It's conversations.with.cam. We're trying to put out more content on there so you can follow over there. And that's all. Again, you can purchase the Quiet Your Mind and Busy Your Hands journal at camerooksrogers.com/quiet-your-mind or in the show notes. And I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.